Hello folks, I'm Paul Abramson. I'm running for Evansville City Council. Before I talk about myself, let me just spend a couple minutes talking about my adopted hometown of Evansville. The reason is I've got a few hopefully humorous videos that I've put out there, and maybe there's people from other parts of the country who may see those videos and say, where is Evansville? What is this about? How come they let just anyone run for the city council in that place? So Evansville, shown here on the map, Evansville is a good-sized, medium-sized city in the heart of the Midwest. We're about 2.5 to 3 hours in 4 different directions of 4 other major cities. Those 4 cities are much larger than Evansville, but you've got Indianapolis to the north, again about 2.5 to 3 hours drive, Nashville to the south, Louisville to the east, and St. Louis to the west. Evansville is partly a city, but it's partly a rural area. We service the area of, say, about within an hour of here. We've got some great businesses. There's almost no rush hour traffic, good infrastructure, good people, good churches, a variety of quality businesses, manufacturing and technology type businesses are either headquartered in Evansville or near Evansville or have major manufacturing plants, including Berry Plastics. Mead Johnson has a major office here. Also, Toyota has a manufacturing plant less than an hour north of Evansville in Princeton, Indiana. Evansville is also, near here is the historic French Lick site, which for over 100 years has been a beautiful place to take a vacation or walk, and there's a variety of things there. And Santa Claus is also close here to Evansville. Just across the river to the south is Henderson, Kentucky. But Evansville is kind of the city that is the center of what's called the tri-state area. Okay, so, and there's, like I said, there's almost no rush hour traffic. The main east-west expressway is called the Lloyd Expressway. I joke that rush hour is when you're behind 4 cars on the Lloyd Expressway. This is a beautiful city. So if you have a business or you're considering expanding, and particularly expanding in the Midwest, come here to Evansville. This is great people here, and a good quality infrastructure, and you would be welcome. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name again is Paul Abramson. I'm running for Evansville City Council. This is being recorded in 2019. In case some things you put on the internet, who knows, they tend to take a life of their own. This is March of, so it's early in the campaign season, March of 2019 when I'm recording this. And telling you a little bit about myself, I was born in Los Angeles, but please don't blame me. I didn't know where I was at the time. It's my little joke there. I've lived lots of places. I grew up in several cities, Spokane, Washington, for several years as a young boy with my brother, younger brother, and then we were in Chicago for about 1.5 years, Texas, near Houston, Texas for one summer. Where I lived the longest growing up was actually Seattle, and that's where I graduated from high school, was in Seattle. I went in the service. I was in the U.S. Army as a radio operator, cross-trained, became a maintenance clerk, later a motor sergeant. Really enjoyed Germany, learned some German, traveled all around. I was in France a few times, all around in Germany, went down to Switzerland. And actually the Liechtenstein, if one of my funny things, of course, is Liechtenstein. I spent the night in Liechtenstein once. There's not too many people who can say that, but I've actually been there before. That's one of my humorous ads, the Liechtenstein collusion ones. Oh, and later, I was married. I'm divorced now. I have one son. He's out in Northern California. He's a good young man. I get to see him. He's an adult, of course. I get to see him every couple of years. He's married now. And let's see, what else can I tell you about myself? I lived in Japan, well, lots of things. I have a degree in history from Portland State University. So after the Army, I went to Portland, Oregon, near Seattle, of course, about 3 hours away, and took 2 years of German, 2 years of Japanese, or maybe it was 1 year of German, but anyway, 2 years of Japanese, got a degree in history. I had actually a double major and a minor in geography. Went to Japan for 5 years and lived in Tokyo. I traveled all over Asia while I was in Tokyo. Became proficient in Japanese at actually a high conversational level. Worked for a couple of Japanese companies. Also did some writing, wrote for a magazine, wrote a few books when I was there, and did all kinds of things. But after 5 years in Tokyo, I was ready to come back to the U.S. The Japanese people are very civilized, very polite people, but if you're a foreigner in Japan, you are always a foreigner. And I'm taller than most Japanese people, so I stood out. But I've enjoyed going back to Japan a couple of times since then. And it is a beautiful country. And as I said, I also traveled to other places in Asia. I've been in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, Taiwan, lots of different places in Asia, being privileged to spend time traveling there in those various very interesting cultures. Europe, I've been to Europe several times, spent time in Finland, Estonia. Let's see, I was at a conference in Ukraine a few years ago. Let's see, Latvia. Many different places. I've been to Romania, Hungary. I spent, separate from all these things, I spent a month in Israel on an archaeological dig. That was several years ago. Okay, so let's see, I'm not in exact order here, but you can kind of, hopefully you'll get an idea of who I am and why I would hope you'd consider voting for me. Let's see, when I came back from Japan, I got a job at Microsoft and started work there for a short time as a contractor. Later worked for Intel Corporation. Worked for Intel in Seattle, the Microsoft was up in Redmond, Washington, their headquarters right by Seattle, and then so that was kind of like going back home in a way. And then lived in Portland, working for Intel for over a year. I got sucked into the .com boom when that happened, about 17, 18 years ago, and lived in Berkeley, California for 5 years. Yes. Now I need to tell you, I'm a conservative. I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I believe the Bible really is true. And when I was in Berkeley, the conservative town of Berkeley, I spoke to atheist groups willingly. I asked if I could talk to them, not as their enemy, but as a fellow human being, a person traveling in this life, trying to understand the world around us, trying to understand other people. And it seems that there's so much intolerance in the world, and I really don't like that. I'm a guy who has visited mosques, both here in Evansville, also up in Boston. I have visited synagogues in different cities. I'm a Protestant, but I've been to many Catholic churches, spoken to a variety of priests. I'm telling you, I'm getting too much into details, aren't I? But, and there's actually another thing I need to tell you about my background, because it will come out in the campaign if I make too much traction here, and they'll try to use it against me, so I need to discuss that. Politically, I'm not campaigning on some new museum or sexy project. Sometimes cities do that, and they end up being an albatross. It costs millions of dollars, and it doesn't pay for itself, and now you've got this thing that needs heating, air conditioning, and employees every day, but it doesn't pay its own way. There's many cities that have done that. I am more interested in infrastructure. I'd like to see Evansville go from 100,000 people to grow as a community, not just in our culture, but also in what we're capable of. We're on the Ohio River. We're directly connected to the ocean. In fact, back in World War II, Evansville was a major plant for munitions, for airplanes. The LST, which is an important top secret naval project, a type of ship that didn't need a pier or dock. It could cross the Atlantic Ocean, beach itself, dropping off tanks and trucks, men, equipment, and then it had the ability to refloat and get back out to sea and come back again. It was at that time, during World War II, a top secret project. It was headquartered here in Evansville. But I'd like to see more of our infrastructure. Highway 41, which is a major north-south road, it had the lights on it. I would like to try to work with the city engineers to make it so that the average north-south truck or person or delivery truck by truck I mean tractor trailer, the big rigs, that they have less average stops. And so that's one thing I really believe needs to be addressed. Also, right and left turns. I don't know if you've ever been in a big tractor trailer, but an average city or even a highway type turn can be just a very difficult thing for the big rig drivers. Let's say a right turn, they pull all the way out, and then at the last minute have to just spin that wheel and try to then make that turn without getting up on the curb. You hit the curb, you could adjust your load in the back of the trailer depending on how it's loaded, and that could then shift your balance, making it more dangerous. The code, the dot codes and dot meaning Department of Transportation. Yes, that's fine if we're meeting dot, but we can do better. There's several areas in the city where we have industries now, and I'd like to see improvements in our for the truck drivers coming and going, the trains coming through town, although they mostly come at night, which is very good. I think they're actually timed very well to not stop traffic, but that's something that maybe needs to be looked at. Anyway, there's more I could tell you about myself. Let's see, I mentioned living in Germany and living in Japan. I tell people sometimes I may look like and sound like an American, but I've lived 8 years of my adult life outside the United States, both in my time in Germany when I was in the service, and then also in Japan. 5 years traveling around Japan, learning, when in Rome, do as the Romans, when in Tokyo, do as the Tokyoites, or as the Japanese, Japan is the Japanese. Anyway, so I tried to adapt to their culture. Different places I've lived in the world, I have volunteered or tried to be part of it. In fact, when I was in Japan, I was a volunteer editor for a particular Japanese government newspaper. And so I did that for about a year and a half. Hello Toshima was the English name. That was I have the one Yakuza type, 1970. I love old movies, and that includes in America old westerns or film noir, but also in Japanese, although I need to watch them subtitled because my Japanese isn't good enough to keep up. But the old samurai movies or the old Yakuza films, I love these different genres, the old movies. And let's see, Hello Toshima from what, 90s? Around 93, 94. Let's see, I don't need to be telling you this, but if someone in Japan is watching this, that's when I was living in Japan and helped to produce articles. So those are probably still exist somewhere. Okay, creationism. Okay, so let's see. I love history, I love science, I'm a Christian. Over 20 years ago I started a particular webpage called creationism.org. This is not part of my political campaign, but it's part of who I am, and it will be used against me because people who only know evolutionary theory are just adamant that evolution is the only theory and nothing else can be considered. All the scientists agree. All the scientists believe in evolution, even though they don't. But that's their what they say. It's settled science. And so there's a lot that I could talk about, but I won't. Let me just use a hand, okay? A human hand. If you hold up your hand, you probably won't do this. You'll just wonder why I'm holding up my hand. Let's see, let me put it on the white background here and wiggle my fingers individually. This is an engineering miracle, the human hand. It is self-assembling. It needs no external maintenance usually. It is partially self-repairing. It's 100% biodegradable, right? Who believes that this fell together by accident? I just don't have enough faith. I do not have enough faith to believe in evolution, okay? To me, it is much more logical to consider that we have remember I used to live in California, creator or creators, he, she, it, or they. I'm running for city council, Ward 6, which is the near west side. It's kind of north and west of the downtown area. And I hope you'll consider voting for me. Thank you for your time.